On this episode of This Week in Space, we're talking about Space Stations, Inc., the rise of the private sector in orbit. Stay with us.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is This Week in Space, episode number 127, recorded on September 6, 2024, Space Stations, Inc. Hello and welcome to another episode of This Week in Space, the Space Stations, Inc. edition. I'm Rod Pyle, Editor-in-Chief of Ad Astra Magazine, and I'm here as always with my good friend Tarek Malik, Editor-in-Chief at space.com. Hello, my friend.
Hello, Rod. Hello, it's Friday. It's Friday again. It's
How
podcast
exciting.
day. So
Podcast day, and I don't know what it's like where you are, but it's going to be 110 here today.
Ooh, it's
and
in the 60s.
As soon as we're done, I am blowing down because if I go over the mountains to the north, it's 20 degrees cooler. But importantly, today we're going to be talking about private space stations, their implications, with Max Haot, CEO of VAST, a major player in commercial space, and he'll be joining us shortly. Before we start, a subtle reminder, not so subtle reminder, please don't forget to do us a solid and make sure to like, subscribe, and all the other cool podcast things when you subscribe, because we need your support. All right.
very important.
It's time for a space joke.
Yes.
Ding. And this comes from loyal listener Jason Egan. Hey,
Jason.
Tarek,
Yes, Rod.
of all the moons in our solar system, which one is the most edible?
The most edible moon. I don't know. Is it the moon? Right? I don't know. What?
No, it would be Enceladus.
Oh, don't you mean, Rod, enchiladas?
Ugh.
Come on. It's the tastiest of moons.
Or appropriate to today, what sound will Starliner make when it comes down later on this afternoon?
Yay, spoilers. Spoilers.
It will go Boeing, Boeing, Boeing. Okay. Now, I've heard that some folks put their heads in the oven and pretend they live on Venus when it's joke time on this show, but you can help save us and you from being singed by our humor, although I did like the first joke there. That was a good one. Send your best, worst, or most indifferent space joke to us at twis@twit.tv. That's TWIS at twit.tv. And now, let's get some headlines, because we got headlines, and I always like to start with Starliner, but
that's
deference
fine.
to you.
Let's do that.
To you.
No, let's start with Starliner. It's big news.
Yeah?
Big news this week.
Well, we hope it's big news today. Yeah, we hope it's good news today. So tell us what's going on.
Yeah, we got our stories, by the way, they're all from space.com this week, but I mean, everyone else covered them too. But
the best ones are at space.com.
So I got two kind of interesting things about Boeing Starliner, but I'll try to be really quick. The big news is that it's coming back to Earth. As you and I are recording, NASA and Boeing are getting ready to pop that thing off the International Space Station, land it overnight tonight back on Earth at White Sands Space Harbor in New Mexico. Undocking is around like 6 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time. Landing is around 12:03 a.m. Saturday Eastern time. White Sands, you can watch it all on space.com, but also from NASA on that NASA Plus app that they've got. And that'll be interesting to see. You know, caveat, no astronauts riding aboard. We talked about it before. It's returning back crewless, and that's the other kind of big story that came out this week. In the big pre-landing conference, NASA was pretty much asked, like, what's the deal? Like, what's the mood? Because there were reports, and we talked about them, I think, last week, last episode, about a lot of differences of opinion on the NASA and the Boeing sides of this. And in fact, there was a New York Post article and a few others that really said that there was a lot of really harsh, words, that there might have even been yelling and screaming, about all of this because of the disagreements between, is Starliner safe to undock because of the thrusters? And
excuse me, but just to be clear, this is Boeing saying, hey, we reviewed everything. It's safe, use it.
It's safe, use it.
Saying no. Abundance of caution. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the fundamental disagreement, and apparently it got very emotional. And NASA's Steve Stitch, said pretty overtly that there was tension in the room when they made the decision to do that. So, it's kind of one of those decisions where no one is left feeling good at the end at it. NASA clearly doesn't want to have to make that call. Boeing thinks that it wasn't the right call, and it will have, regardless, it means that changes have to be made to Starliner to avoid a lot of the issues that caused the thruster dropouts, and we'll see how that goes. In the meantime, we've got this landing. Hopefully it goes well. Hopefully there's no thruster issues, and then Boeing can say, "Look, we told you so." It's fine. If anything pops up, then NASA's caution, was very well warranted, and then they'll go back to see how they can fix it. NASA did say that they have pushed back the Starliner 1 launch. That's the next crewed launch of this vehicle from February of 25 to August of 2025. 1 year from just the past month as we're recording this. That's when the next one could fly, depending on the nature of whatever fixes on how they do the thrusters for the issues that they've been seeing.
And just a quick coda to this, I read earlier, I don't remember if it was in your article or another one, that the haunted spacecraft effect that they were getting, which really, at first I thought, oh, this is clickbait, but you listen to it, it was weird. It sounded like sonar pings in that thing, and it was just an interference pattern setting up, right?
It was an audio setting, between the ISS and the station. They had these weird noises. They couldn't figure out what it was. There was another bit of audio that came out this week that was very interesting, and the folks at ABC News and Nightline had it first, and they caught, because there's this live stream of downlink from the space station. You can tune into it and hear what the astronauts are up to, and they caught kind of a final conversation between Sonny Williams, one of the astronauts on Starliner. Butch Wilmore is the other. And the ground, as she's packing up Starliner for the last time, because they closed the hatch the day prior to this podcast recording, and she was talking about how good she felt launching on the vehicle, how bittersweet it felt to be packing up simulators in the seats for her and Butch Wilmore to go back to the ground, because they're putting their suits on the ship. They can't wear them on Dragon. So the suit, their Starliner suits are on the capsule coming back to Earth.
Are they stuffed with dirty laundry or something?
I'm not certain.
Or maybe they just pressurize them.
Yeah, they just kind of strap them in. She said that they had like a mass simulator in the seats to be them, but it was a little sad. That's what they trained for this mission, and now they don't get to perform that part of it. But she understood all of the rationale, and is good that the safety is kind of the paramount there. So it's a little bit of a downer. I mean, but I really hope that everything comes off swimmingly for this undocking, so that it'll NASA and Boeing can move forward with the other 6 planned flights that they have.
Ironic you said swimmingly for a spacecraft that's going to come down on dry land, but let's move on to New Glenn. So after all my comments on this show for the last 2 years about supplies going into the New Glenn factory and us waiting for the back door to open, the back door is opening and things are happening.
That's right. This week, Boeing made not one, but 2 big announcements for their New Glenn rocket. New Glenn, for the noobs, is a massive heavy lift vehicle that is going to be reusable, will land on a ship at sea. If that sounds familiar, it's because they thought of it first and then sued SpaceX to try to get them to stop.
Oh,
and then
really?
It turned out, yeah, they did.
I didn't know that.
But it turned out that the concept predated both of them, and so SpaceX ended up proceeding, and of course we know where history is done. But this week, Blue Origin unveiled Jaclyn, and that is their new barge landing ship. And they did it on X and showed photos of it and some aerial video of it. It's a very large ship that will hold the first stage of New Glenn when it comes back. And Jaclyn, if you're wondering, I thought it was like a Kennedy reference, but no, Jaclyn is Jeff Bezos' mom, and so they named the ship after her, and it's in Port Canaveral, and it's going to be based there for the next few tests. Meanwhile, Blue Origin moved the second stage of New Glenn out to their launch pad at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, where they're expected to start doing some hot fire tests in the future. The first stage was tested earlier this summer, and so this is the second stage, and then they're going to pop that thing together, and if everything works right, they have set a launch date in October to launch the Escapade mission for NASA, which is going to launch missions to two spacecraft to Mars. I think it's two to Mars, and I think that launch date is the 10th of October. Don't quote me on that. It's either the 10th or the 13th or somewhere around there, but it's within the window to go to Mars, so they're going to make it. Is the big story, right? That's otherwise they have to wait another 2 years to go to Mars, and no one wants to do that.
I have it down for October 13th.
There you go. There you go.
Okay.
It's not
Finally, just a quickie. We have a solar sail story. Now, when I was in my 30s, late 30s, in the 90s, I was working with a group of JPL people called the World Space Foundation that built a solar sail that didn't end up flying, but we spent years developing them, mostly, this deployment mechanism that I think is ultimately what ended up getting used. So there was some actual good work that came out of that. And there's been a couple of solar sails flown, both by the U.S. and Japan, right?
Yeah.
That have worked. But now we've got
Japan sent one to Venus. So,
but it's having some interesting things are going on. What's happening?
Yeah, well, so NASA developed, they launched a new solar sail CubeSat called, and I'm going to make sure I read this properly, the Advanced Composite Solar Sail System. So solar sail, say that 3 times fast, Rod. They call it ACS3 because there's 3 S's like a snake. And they launched it in April. And this week they showed off the very first kind of selfie picture of the solar sail deployed in space. They deployed it in very late August. I guess they had some challenges trying to get it out there in the beginning, but they were able to get it deployed. And now the spacecraft is kind of in a free drift mode, kind of tumbling end over end, while NASA uses cameras on the spacecraft to make sure that the sail is extended properly, that the booms went out, that the kind of that thin mylar type sheeting is extended, so that they can start preparing the navigation tests to see how this new kind of a solar sail technology will work. Can they tack the way that they expect to? Does the spacecraft respond? Is it viable for small payloads, across the solar system? There was a lot of talk that, oh my God, it's like tumbling in space.
And some press outlets kind of use that as a draw, right?
They did, but it was always planned to do that, and nothing is always certain.
Now, why is it planned? Is it so they can recover from a tumble? Test that. When think about the CubeSat, it's the size of like a toaster, 12, whatever, and everything is wound up in there. And so all of that has to spring out. So the momentum of
and you need that to dampen out, and you want to make sure that you don't start firing thrusters or reaction wheels or whatever they're using for orientation before the sail is okay. That it gets snagged and we have to do something else, to kind of jigger it out or not. That's kind of what they're trying to do right now. It's going to take them a few days or weeks, and then once they do that, then they'll orient it the way they need it to be, and then they'll get things sorted.
Well, very cool. And if this
can see it from the ground, use the NASA app. You can they're up, and you can look up and see it pass overhead.
It's very cool, and if this works out as hoped, it portends for a lot of good things in the future, because this is a great way to go places slowly at first, eventually with some speed, but very energy efficient and so forth. All right, let's move on. We will be back in just a few moments after this short break with Max Haot of VAST. Stay with us. This episode of This Week in Space is brought to you by Veeam. Without your data, your customers' trust turns to digital dust. That's why Veeam's data protection and ransomware recovery ensures that you can secure and restore your enterprise data wherever and whenever you need it, no matter what happens. As the #1 global market leader in data resilience, Veeam is trusted by over 77% of the Fortune 500 to keep their businesses running when digital disruptions like ransomware strike. That's because Veeam lets you back up and recover your data instantly across your entire cloud ecosystem, proactively detect malicious activity, remove the guesswork by automating your recovery plans and policies, and get real-time support from ransomware recovery experts. Data is the lifeblood of your business, so get data resilient with Veeam. Go to veeam.com. That's VEEAM.com to learn more. Veeam.com. And we are back with Max Haot of VAST. Max, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Rod and Tarek. Really excited to be here.
It's a great pleasure to have you. And I saw you speak at the International Space Development Conference, and you knocked it out of the park. So we just couldn't wait to get you. So as we usually like to do, could you kind of give us just a primer of how you got to where you are? And then we'll talk about what VAST does. But I think it's always interesting for somebody that reaches the level that you have in this business to understand sort of your progression there.
Yeah, that's thanks for asking.
Sure.
So I'm originally from Belgium, French speaking, and I had the chance very early day as a kid, like 8 to 12-year-old, to write software for BBS, which was a predecessor to the internet. So I became quickly skilled in some basic software programming and kind of the precursor to the internet. Then I wanted to be a live TV director, and I went and did an internship in London at a company called IMG. And instead of staying there for 1 year, I'm actually self-taught, never went to college. I ended up being the CTO of the internet division. And I think by the time, this was 95, by the time I was 19, I had 100 software developer working for me, building websites like Wimbledon, Manchester United, the Patriots in the US, and already early days doing live streaming and high-scale computing, because these websites these sport websites are very popular. So I did that for 10 years, and throughout that, I built a software tool to do basically television and web broadband at the same time, and we sold that to Verizon. And as somebody involved on internet, I was always dreaming of immigrating to Silicon Valley in the US. So that was my opportunity to move to the US. I ended up in New York City, worked a couple of years at Verizon, and as soon as I can, wanted to become an entrepreneur. And, after a couple of years, I started a company called Livestream, which was, taking a lot of the background I had in early live streaming and website development. And Livestream is basically a live streaming video player and platform that creators can use to put it on their website. So we did that for 10 years, and we sold that to Vimeo. In that process, I also built some hardware expertise in building a video camera called Mevo. You can check it out at mevo.com, which is a video camera, wireless video camera, focused on, specialized for live streaming. So that was my, entrepreneurial, I guess, in software and internet career. But as early as 2000 and, call it 5 or something like that, when I arrived in the US, I started to think about the environmental movement and the problem on Earth, and trying to decide, should we decelerate, should we conserve, or should we strive to expand humanity and embrace our nature and strive for, at the time I was thinking about, infinite humanity, a world where there are more humans in space than on Earth, and maybe a world where we don't even know where they are and how many there are, right? And so that's what I, became kind of convinced that I wanted to contribute to that future, and I think that's not mutually exclusive from obviously making sure we save the Earth, and Earth is our home planet. But wanted to, move my career to space as quickly as I can. At the time, I also came across SpaceX and what Elon was doing, and it was pretty interesting. Like, oh God, an internet guy can make that switch. And so it took me about 10 years to finish Livestream, have enough money. Obviously, I was lucky that it was a lot easier to start a space company in 2017 than it was in 2002. You needed less capital, you could raise money. And so that's when I really started Launcher. So Launcher was basically a small launch company with a vision to build a small rocket. Our main unique aspect was focus on engine performance, and we are still developing the E2 engine to sell or spin out later. And then you build a bigger rocket and a reusable one, and so on. So that was Launcher. We started in New York because I was there. Then I sold my third company, Mevo, to Logitech in 2021. And after selling that, I was able to move. I have 3 kids and was living in New York. So before they were too old, I fulfilled my dream to get to California, maybe not Silicon Valley, but actually a better place for space. And then we moved in 2021 with a small launcher team, 5 people, and obviously my family here. And we opened in Hawthorne the launcher office that we grew to about 80 people. We flew to satellite to orbit on transporter mission. That was our 3rd stage there, to various success. On the second one, we deployed all payload, but a bit too quickly. On the first one, we had an anomaly, but we communicated with it. But we built all the technologies and skills to achieve that. And then basically I met the founder of VAST, Jed McCaleb, and the reason I met him is in the context of fundraising for Launcher, the company I had created as a founder and creator. Jed was not interested in investing in a rocket company. He had already done that, and he had created VAST. And obviously we're now segueing to VAST, where I'm the CEO now. With the mission that, rocket are sort of taken care of and space access, but what SpaceX is doing. And Jed had really, decided on his own timeline that when he was successful and had enough money, he would invest a significant portion of his net worth in space exploration. And so he looked at that and said, the rockets and space access is done. It's not for me. But I'd like to focus on the next big thing, which is obviously habitat and space habitat and space station. And so that's how VAST was born about 3.5 years ago, before I was involved.
Not very long.
Yeah, not very long. And, VAST had assembled an amazing team of engineers that had worked on crew program, mainly Dragon. Instead of the next level of the vision, which is, we want to be the company that makes, artificial gravity that obviously has never been done at human scale and through spinning. And you can obviously see in science fiction, but we set up the long-term vision of VAST, which is we want to be the company that makes that a reality. And then through that process, I joined as Jed and I agreed to a deal to buy Launcher. And his vision of it was really to acquire the talent and acquire, a partner with me, and see if I could help him run it and scale it there. So that was in February last year. I've been here for a year and a half. At first, I was president, and I became CEO in August last year as I built the trust with the team and with Jed. It's been a pretty wild ride, and I love obviously. Space in general and space exploration, and just want to do everything I can to contribute. And I love rockets and still do, but the chance to be able to develop the world's first commercial space station, and obviously the roadmap beyond that. Space, human spaceflight is obviously the pinnacle of the space industry. Anyone working in the space industry wish they will get at some point the chance to work on it. So I sort of get a shortcut enabled by the incredible investment that we have at VAST to make it possible, right? You couldn't really start a human spaceflight company without significant investment. And with being invited to be CEO by Jed, I get that chance. So that's the background. So it's been long.
No, but that's great.
That's
I mean, this is like a key inspiration moment for people looking at a new space career. Most of us won't achieve your heights, but that's a hell of a story. And I'm really anxious to talk to you about the artificial gravity angle, but I know, because Tarek always does, he has a burning question he wants to ask, which he will do as soon as we come back from this break. Stand by.
It's funny that you mentioned Launcher, Max, because I recall several years back, actually more than that, visiting Final Frontier Design, the spacesuit company, in Brooklyn at the Naval Yards, and like down the hall, I remember going to their workspace was the sign for Launcher, and I was like, what is that company over here? There's a rocket company in New York. I was really excited when I found that out back then, and then you moved away, and I was really sad. So,
I was really excited about New York. The lunar lander was built by Grumman on Long Island, and there's an amazing history and still some contractor there, but. And thought investors would be kind of interested to, because most investors are in New York to sponsor a local company. Some talents were interested to move there, but if you after I moved to California and realized the people I could work with and hire, the contractors, the ecosystem here, I get why it was sort of a joke to be there for what we were trying to do. So it was great for the early days to really build the kernel of the team that designed the E2 rocket engine. But Los Angeles area is where one needs to be if you want the odds on your side in a big way.
And to be clear, I am from California, so I highly hail the plaudits of that state. I was.
But you
curious,
came from Stockton.
Hey.
So he's the cool part of the state.
I lived in Los Angeles for 6 years.
Okay.
You
lived in Long Beach, actually. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
I did. No, I was curious. You mentioned like in 2005 when you started thinking about kind of like the overall future of like the Earth and whatnot. But was there a kernel in Little Max, when you were young, looking up at the night sky or really getting into space that was there in the background the whole time? Or was it like a new interest born from that desire to do something for the world?
Unfortunately, it wasn't new. So like a few inspiration as a kid was the trip my dad took me to Florida. Mm-hmm. When I was 10 or 11 year old, and I got to see Disney World and so on. But the thing that really struck me was obviously Cape Canaveral. I'm not a thankful naturalized citizen. But I have a photo where I'm sitting on the manifold, the turbine or the gas generator exhaust manifold of the F1 engine in the rocket garden at Cape, and I'm tiny on it. Something that's not really legal and no one should do. But I was very interested already there. At age 10, 12. And actually, one of the things that struck me the most in that trip is, I was looking down combustion chambers and so on, and like, where all the stuff? Like, it's like I started to get interested. I guess if you've never thought about it, you'd think it would be like a jet engine with rotating parts and so on. So that's the early interest. Another interest that converged a lot was watching the movie War Games as a kid. That's actually what got me into computing. He had a modem, and I had a Commodore 64 and got a 300 baud modem. And when I was like 8, and then obviously bigger computer, bigger modems, all before the internet. But also, War Games kind of straddled also rockets, but they're missile. But there is the geopolitical, ICBM, space kind of side of it. And I took a really keen interest in learning a lot of history about deterrence and mutually assured destruction, and develop views that, unfortunately, that's what really the presence of it is, or fortunately or unfortunately, we'll find out in the future. It's what dictates everything about our world today, and most people are not even aware it exists. Think it's gone since the Cold War. So all of that kind of merged together on the that's really the technical side of the interest and the excitement of rocket engine and rockets and space. But obviously, I'm the philosophical side of it's time for me to spend the rest of my life and career to contribute to space exploration in whichever best way I can. That's kind of the 2005 part of it.
See, the space bug, Rod, gets us all young, whether we like it or not. And for our younger,
you guys don't have it at all, right?
Yeah,
that's right. But for our younger listeners and viewers, I'll just point out that War Games is a 1980s sci-fi film with starring Matthew Broderick and Ali Sheedy, and an iconic computer, like Max was saying, unfortunately named Whopper. But you should really check it out because it still holds up.
Really well.
It holds up right now.
It does. And I was going to say, if I ever get to visit VAST, I expect to see a mock-up of Whopper taking up the whole wall there. That will say, perhaps
joking aside, we're building our control room and our headquarters, and I pushed very hard for it to be a replica of the War Games. And then, we have some amazing design advisors. Peter Russell Clark, that was one of the 20 industrial designers at Apple, worked, for Johnny Ive and Steve Jobs for 20 years. And instead of thinking that, maybe we have a greater goal and mission. So it won't look like that. It looked really cool, and it'd be a different brand, but I tried. I failed.
Well, as long as you have blinky lights, it'll be okay.
That's right.
So my question, I want to jump right into space stations here. I mean, your core business, at least from what we see, looking outside the company is private space stations. And just to kind of give us a grounding here, could you talk a little bit about, I mean, it's kind of obvious, but the difference between what you're doing versus something like the ISS or Mir or Skylab, and specifically, how a private company operates in this setting?
So, if you look at the VAST, we decided that, we want to create a world where, there are more humans living in space than they are living on Earth. And obviously, if you go to space right now and you start as a professional astronaut athlete on day one, you exercise 2 hours a day for 6 months to a year. When you'll come back, you'll be a physical wreck in terms of bone loss, muscle loss, some vision problem, and other medical issue. And so, to create that future where people live in space, we obviously need to go to Mars and the Moon and other planets. But we also need, space habitat in space that are livable for more than 6 months to a year, and that are livable for anyone. And that's where artificial gravity come from. And so, if you look at that, that's our long-term roadmap, right? 20 years, 15, probably more than 15, 30 years, and that's our, guiding star. And then, as a company, we have an incredible amount of funding available from our first, investor and our founder, Jed McCaleb. But if you look at, that money to get to that vision of an artificial gravity space station built on 7 Starship module, you can see it on the right, the stick. It's 105 meter long by 7 meter diameter. It rotates at 4 RPM and create 1 G on either end. It will take a lot more money than we have to get there. So what we need is to have stepping stones, right? You need a roadmap and you need to get there. If you look at the space station market, we are a company, a business. You mentioned commercial. Right now, all space station project and all space station that exist are government, government programs. The ISS, obviously, with Europe, Japan, Canada, and the US, and now the Chinese space station, and obviously the historical Russian space station. They all are government, expensive government programs. And so, our bet, and obviously, is that it is not a time to have a commercial space station, one that is anchor customer from governments, in NASA specifically, but also is working with industry and private individual, whether on flights or on payload and in space manufacturing. And so at VAST, we look back at this decade based on the funding we had, and as you might have mentioned, there is an incredible opportunity in this market, or this new market, which is the retirement of the ISS in 2030, and the procurement that NASA has going called Commercial Air Destination, NASA CLD, where in 2026, mid-2026, NASA will pick a partner or two, we don't know, to basically build the successor to the ISS. And obviously, just like the commercial crew program that created Dragon and Starliner, in the past, if you look at crew vehicle, NASA owned the asset and designed them on the cost-plus contract for example, the Space Shuttle and Saturn V and so on. But now with Dragon, they've had an amazing success in creating a commercial transportation layer by not owning the Dragons or the Starliners and paying per seat, per flight. And obviously, they helped certify the vehicle, they developed it, but they didn't pay for the full development, and they certainly don't own it. And they have a guaranteed price per seat, which is orders of magnitude lower than, or at least one order of magnitude, and probably more than the shuttle. So NASA wants to do the same for space station. Right now, the space station is owned, built and owned by NASA and its partner, and they want to recreate what they did with Dragon for space station. So it means being a customer of it, paying per day on the station, per trip, per payload power, per facility, per dedicated rack. And this is an incredible opportunity for the companies bidding to basically have an anchor customer of NASA and then be able to find other customers and generate more revenue. So this decade, VAST's number one objective is to win this competition, the NASA CLD. And as you've seen on the website, we have a program before that. So the NASA space station of VAST will be called probably Haven 2. But we basically looked at it and we said, this was about a year and a half ago. This was between February and May last year. How are we going to win this? We actually were not even selected on the first phase of it because we didn't exist. And so NASA picked a few of our competitors about 4 years ago or so. They picked Northrop Grumman that now retired. They picked Axiom Space. They picked Nanoracks that became Voyager, that became Starlab. So now it's a Starlab. And they picked Orbital Reef, which is a partnership between Blue Origin and Sierra Space. And so they gave each of these companies roughly $160 million to design a paper space station, right? Do maybe a bit of hardware with a window and so on, but none of them are expected to fly a space station as part of the phase one and demonstrate that they can be a space station company. And so last year we realized, we're late. NASA doesn't even know who we are. What could we do to make sure we win? And that's when Haven 1 came about. And the answer was, we should build a space station. We should, launch it on a Falcon 9 to orbit. Should make sure it's safe and check it out. And then we should send a crew of 4 to go and visit it for at least 2 weeks and come back home safely. And our view is that if we are able to do all of that before NASA and obviously the Congress, Senate, White House, international partner have to decide on who should be the partner for the successor to the International Space Station. Our view is that if we do all of that and we do it safely, which is number one, obviously, and we do it by mid-26, it will be very difficult for our competitors to win or us not to win. And so in May last year, we announced Haven 1, and that's what we're doing.
He just said it's Field of Dreams. VAST is Field of Dreams, Rod. If they build it, they will come, right? No, that's what it is. That's what it is.
Well, and it's a really, really exciting vision, Max. And, and it's. I mean, we've got bundles of questions. We're not going to get through them all. But before we go to them, because I could see Tarek squirming in his chair, we have another break. We'll be right back. Stand by.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask Max why you thought now was the time for a commercial space station like VAST and the others there, but you kind of really laid the argument out there for us. As you said, actually in the beginning, 2017 is much different to start a company than it was in 2002. There's a much more openness and much more demonstration like you're talking about there. And you mentioned Haven 1, and that's like kind of the next question I want to talk about, because now we know what you and what VAST are trying to do. But Haven 1, I mean, it's been just over a year, May 2023, I think, that VAST announced the Haven 1 and the VAST 1 mission, which would be that first module. And I guess you would fly up there with SpaceX. Is that correct? And I'm just curious if you can walk us through like what Haven 1 will be like to prove out some of the fundamental concepts that that you want to make sure that you cement down as you build up to bigger and bigger space stations.
So, if you look back at our goal to win the CLD program, Haven 1's sole purpose is to turn us into an actual space station company. I don't think anyone can say they are a space station company unless they have a space station on orbit and a crew has visited it and come back home safely. So that's the purpose of it. The scope was actually, if you look at how we designed Haven 1, we started with this goal, right? We need to become a space station company, and we need to do it before mid-2026. We decided on priorities and requirements. Number one, safety, right? It's obvious that the government and no one would want to be involved or work with a space station that is not safe or has had incident. Number two is the timeline, not the features of the space station. Like, we need this to happen before the government makes its selection, because that's the biggest opportunity in the world to find an anchor customer. NASA is the biggest customer you can have and is your foundation to then build upon there. And then we started designing the actual space station, and we felt we shouldn't really design a space station, especially a single module space station, without the visiting vehicle partner being part of our weekly meeting and the design reviews and so on. There are many things from MMOD shielding to making sure we design it so that the nose cone of Dragon doesn't interfere with the space station, keep out zone, and the life support system and how it interacts between the Haven 1, the airflow and attitude control. I mean, it's endless, the amount of interaction between the two systems, especially, if you're at ISS scale and Dragon is very small, it's one type of interaction. But in our case, we're kind of a little bit bigger, but we are sort of equal, even close to equal on mass. So we then went, we have a very aligned culture, and we love SpaceX, and we have, the same long-term mission, right? Make life multiplanetary. But on a more practical sense, the only working visiting vehicle or human spacecraft you can work with for a US company is the Dragon, right?
Yeah.
So we went to them in, this was in March, April, after we decided, and we started to design the mission together. Originally we wanted Haven 1 to be even a lot simpler, more like a second stage of a rocket with not much inside, and we would prove docking, and the crew would just go maybe with an IV or EVA suit, would just go there for an hour or two and come back home. Mm-hmm. And, as we started talking with SpaceX, we started to realize, hey, you're going to make all this investment. Why don't you focus on something different where you can really extend the amount of time people that buy a Dragon flight can stay in space, right? Right now, SpaceX can offer a flight to the ISS, to the PAM mission, but these are limited to, let's say 1 a year. And then they also offer free flyers, as you know, Inspiration 4, Polaris Dawn, which we're really excited for that mission in the next few days, hopefully.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw, there's another mission with a leader called Chan that is going to polar orbit that has been announced.
Ram 2 this year, too. That's right.
Yes, that's coming so quickly. I think might be early next year, but maybe this year. You're right. So we basically realized that, hey, if Haven 1 existed and it was equipped with life support and space and sleeping berth and so on, people could, instead of going 2 or 3 days in space, that's what the free flyers are limited to, they could dock to Haven 1 and stay for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And 2 weeks will give you, the space sickness actually happens for the first 2 or 3 days. So 2 weeks is really important. It's a really important milestone so that you can get comfortable and you can enjoy your time there. And also you can have more space. It's about 4 or 5 times more volume than you would have on a free flyer. And you have other features. We have Starlink internet, we have payloads, we have a large window, we have sleeping berths. And so together we sort of felt, hey, if you're going to do something vast, you should try to do a space station that Dragon can dock to and people can stay for 2 weeks. And so that became the next requirement, where we started to design within, safety, timeline, and this. And we looked at how much consumables can we pack into Haven 1. Haven 1 is not closed loop ECLSS. That takes a much longer development cycle. So ECLSS meaning life support system. Yeah. It's an open loop one, meaning you have CO2 scrubbing cartridge you have to replace, and that don't recycle. The water is not recycled. The trash is not recycled. And so Haven 1 was designed actually as a disposable space station. It will be on orbit for 3 years. And during that time, we can have 40 days for 4 crew. So in our plans, the first expedition will be 3 months after its launch. And then during the 3 years, we hope to have another 3 expedition of 2 weeks. So that's how it came about. And we signed a deal with SpaceX that, provide the first crewed flight. So we are on a full contract for the first Dragon mission. Also to launch Haven 1 on a reusable Falcon 9. And that's also public. At the announcement we did with SpaceX, we have an option for the second expedition.
Oh, nice.
And then since then, we furthered the relationship. We also announced that we will be the first space station, or maybe the first customer, but definitely the first space station to have Starlink laser connectivity. So we are installing Starlink created laser terminal on Haven 1 that communicate with Starlink satellite and provide the crew over Wi-Fi or over the control system, 1 gigabit two-way connectivity at very low latency, something that's very unprecedented from anything on the ISS, and I think something that they will experiment with on Polaris Dawn. So we're watching eagerly how that will work. So
that means your VAST 1 crew can watch VAST 2 launch in live stream in real time, right? So,
I mean, it
if
means
they're
that
there at the same time.
If our customers have device, Android, iPhone, whatever, but they will be able to, do FaceTime or Zoom, and it's actually less latency than Starlink on Earth. We have to go up, down, and we actually have half the distance. I don't know how it will convert in latency, but it will be really incredible, and that's another aspect of getting closer and working closely with SpaceX, or the partner. Our roadmap requires Starship. Our access to our space station requires Dragon, and so this is our long-term partner. We look forward to keep working with.
And size-wise, you mentioned like the size kind of compared to Dragon early on, but about the size of a bus inside, or like Destiny or Columbus. What should people who are
it's a 4.2 meter diameter on the outside, 3.8 meter inside skin, and it's designed a little bit differently. We haven't revealed the interior design. We will, before the end of the year. If you look at the ISS, all of it is racks all around, and there's actually no area where you can have direct access to the pressure skin. There might be some, but most of them are not. And so in VAST, we have a first area, which is more like a smaller corridor with the Haven 1. So a smaller corridor where we have a lot of the systems and consumable and the sleeping berth. And then we have a room at the front, which you have access to the full 3.8 meter volume, basically, which is, the lounge or something like that. So, and by the way, keep watching our website. We'll reveal that soon. And so if you look at Dragon, obviously Dragon, the pressure vessel is not the full of Dragon with the trunk. And so you're looking at, about 4 times more usable volume, like livable volume, than you would have if you were just in the Dragon. But also a lot more facilities and a different aesthetic. We are lesser transport, more destination, a bigger window, and so on. Obviously, if you do an Inspiration 4 type mission, they had a great window there, but that's not on all mission like Polaris don't. They have the best window, no window, I guess.
Rod was just asking if you're trying to get Jared Isaacman to book that first trip to Haven 1.
We love Jared. We know each other. We communicate, and we love the Polaris Zone crew. And of course, we'd love to have him come to Haven 1.
All right. Well, I've got the big burning question coming, but not until we take a break. So stand by. We'll be right back. So we've seen a lot of space stations over the years that have attempted to show us designs that would create artificial gravity, through centrifugal force. I mean, back even when I was a kid in the 60s, there was a 10-year-old Disney show called Disneyland, and later relabeled as Tomorrowland, where they showed these versions of von Braun's big circular space station.
Which I was YouTube videos.
Yeah, and I was very surprised to find out as an adult, that was inflatable. That was just rubber, and there were concerns about people puncturing and the thing zinging around like a deflated balloon. But, and of course, in movies, continually, we've seen both space stations and spacecraft with artificial gravity creation throughout. Well, of course, then you see Star Trek with the gravity push button. But in terms of
gravity plating, they have gravity plating. Yeah. That's what they're allowed to use.
I worked on it, I know. But in terms of realistic designs, what are the big challenges in creating a space station that can have some level of artificial gravity?
Well, the biggest at first is to become a space station company that can, build these habitats and have the life support system and do docking and, all of that, right? If you really look at the delta, being able to do that, you can sort of iterate and get your way to bigger and spinning. So that's why we do Haven 1 and why, we need to get there before we really execute on that. Even in Haven 1, we have opportunities to start developing some of the technologies. So we have a plan to, even in Haven Demo, we haven't talked about Haven Demo, but we are flying early next year a satellite on a bandwagon mission of SpaceX, 500 kilogram satellite that is all of the sensors, all of the propulsion, all of the flight computer, flight software, radio, a single solar panel, the batteries, all the power system and charging, and so on. And it's just a demonstration to make sure our avionics stack is reliable before we obviously send the larger Haven 1.
Like a space station in a jar, basically.
Yeah, without any of the human, no pressurized volume, nothing human related, other than obviously it's all redundancy and fault tolerance like it will be on Haven 1. But back to the point, even as early as that, we actually plan to spin the demo satellite and have some IMUs and other sensors that we concern, what will happen to these sensors if we are spinning, right? There's no real answer. So even though it's very long term for us, on our first space mission, we already are doing spinning and we are testing. On Haven 1, we plan to spin and do a lunar uncrewed lunar artificial gravity demonstration for the payload.
Oh.
So at the end of the life, the 3 years, we will be spinning Haven 1 and generate lunar gravity on the payload rack. We have 10 mid-deck locker, which is the kind of the standard format on the ISS. And we will be spinning, and obviously we're offering customers of this payload, or some of them will have microgravity for 3 years, but 1 or 2 of them will wait for the spinning opportunity. We even have a soft plan to consider doing it crewed, and we are in discussion about, with SpaceX about how much Dragon can spin, right? What are the limitations? Obviously, we need to keep Dragon safe after the spin there. Back to your original question, in terms of for example, the stick, which is 7 Starship launched module that creates 105 meter by 7 meter diameter stick. Some of the challenge, obviously, getting to the point we can build that and, build Starship size 7 meter diameter structure and launch them. The next big problem is also docking these adapters. Right now there are 2 ways to dock space station. I guess the Russian and the Chinese have different ways, but for us there is an IDA docking. It's about a 1.2 meter circular interface that Dragon, for example, has. And then there is a larger one called CBM, Common Berthing Mechanism, that Cygnus has, and that's how they interface a lot of the module. And that's berthing, so you need the robotic arm but it's larger. I don't know the exact dimension, and it's a square with rounded corners, much larger. In our vision of our artificial gravity space station, we're talking about 7 meter diameter docking. We need much bigger. So is it berthing? Is it docking? It's definitely we want a big opening in between these 7 modules. So that's not trivial, definitely not trivial, and something we will have to develop. The other piece, obviously, the propulsion and that's needed to obviously maintain it, the rigidity, and as I mentioned, all of the sensors and system, and make sure that they are good with spinning. And then lastly, it's a lot of energy to spin and unspin. It's not that much propellant energy to maintain the spin, but to unspin the structure and respin it is something we can only do a limited amount of time. So what that means is that we need to find a way for visiting vehicle to come and dock while you're spinning. And so now you're talking about developing a way that the visiting vehicle is spinning as well in synchronization. Again, back to, I think, 2001, you see that? Or,
right.
It's been seen. And we have to make sure that works. So I think I'm probably just scratching the surface. But the main point is that, before we can do any of that, we need to be able to do something like Haven 1 and something bigger than Haven 1 that has multi-module assembly. And then we'll get to do all of that amazing thing. And if you look at VAST, what we're really building is, we didn't talk about it, but before the launcher acquisition, VAST got to about a team of 40. So some of these were the founding team, incredibly experienced engineers. And then we merged with Launcher, which had more junior engineers, but more of them, and we became like 120 people. We are now 550 people. We are scaling at 10 new team members a week, mostly engineering. And by the time we will fly, we expect to be around 800. So clearly, my point there is that the most important thing we have to do is to build a culture, a team, and obviously all the engineering tool and process in the company that can build safe human system at low cost. And low cost means fast as well, right? And so once we have that, right, we don't have that yet. We will only have that once the crew is back from Haven 1 for the first time. But once we have, gone from 0 to 1 and created this system, then I believe we can build, it's any other human system. Is just time and money. So that to me is the biggest challenge, right? How many human-rated, low-cost company exists in the United States? I think there's only one right now, SpaceX.
Yeah. So, given the design you're talking about, and it looks like all these design, none of them are tether systems for creating gravity. They're rigid, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So, given that, ultimately, do you see the company and those technologies moving into spacecraft components for long transits, like going to Mars and so forth?
I mean,
Is that a logical progression?
When I got involved with VAST, one of my first personal observation was, space station and spacecraft are, they obviously are different, but, there's a lot of commonality. So, if you look at the roadmap, I very much like to think about, how do we get from 0 to 1? And like 99% of my brain at VAST is that. And actually, I don't even do a lot of it's probably less than 1%, the long-term roadmap and dream. And a lot of our team obviously have contributed to that. But the point is that, you set this roadmap that you see. And as you learn, as you build, as you iterate, it might change, right? Maybe there will be a tether after the stick. Maybe the stick will have a tether. Maybe we will not do artificial gravity for a bit longer, and then we'll go directly to a circular design or also, wheel design. So I think it's hard to tell whether, what we've decided 3 years ago is going to, for sure we'll just, put our head down and just build exactly that. I think we'll learn and we'll adapt, but the goal remains the same, right? We want to be the company that make artificial gravity a reality, right? Not science fiction. And, we haven't talked about it, but one of the, as you know, I'm sure, one of the really interesting aspect of it is, does it need to be 1G? Maybe, quarter G, lunar gravity, Mars gravity, right, whatever, is going to be enough to live a full life, right? Or maybe to live 10 years without any problem in space. That is probably the biggest contribution, like the next step, right? Before you scale it, if we were able to prove that at human scale, not at my scale or whatever, that would be an incredible contribution to space exploration, I think. So that I think would be the big next step, and a stick can definitely do that. Starship built stick over 105 meter by 7. Then the other designs obviously can be informed of that. Yes, we absolutely need 1G. No, we just need 0.1 of a G. Very different scenarios, basically.
Well, that would be such a gift. I mean, I don't want to get overly dramatic here, but really to everyone certainly involved in this great endeavor, because we have almost no data on that. Mm-hmm. And it's something that they've been talking about for decades, but nothing's been done. So I think that's going to be a remarkable thing. All right, Tarek, you're up for the lightning round.
Yes, I have 4 hopefully really short questions, Max, and they're not that serious. They're kind of silly.
And you totally shared them with me before. No,
no, they're just about the spin themselves. So I think we saw it in the video animation, but for our listeners who haven't seen it, this spin, it's like end over end, right? It's not like a barbecue roll.
Yeah,
correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So if I'm inside, then will I get dizzy or will I get used to it? And if I'm looking out the window and seeing, I guess, the Earth or whatever bobble around as I spin.
So as you said, it's end over end, and the place that will have 1G would be the circular end of the cylinder, 7 meter diameter, right? And obviously, if you're at different levels in the center of the spin, you have microgravity, and then it increases variably. With Coriolis effect and forces, no one really knows, right? The Russian actually built a full-scale centrifuge, but you still have on Earth, and you have 1G, pulling you down. So no one knows. Everybody believe that, 4 RPM, or everybody, I guess, our team, informed by the state-of-the-art science that's out there, that in theory, that 4 RPM might work. And it's not clear whether it's compatible with Windows. You might have to shed all the windows and ignore that, and maybe only occasionally look at it. But it's not clear. No one knows. That's the whole point of it, is we need to know. And we don't know.
And then I guess kind of building up the next step from that, I'm just very curious what your favorite science fiction space station is.
That's interesting. You know what? It's like, in the industry, there are people interested in obviously astronomy and science fiction and so on, but I'm more like rails. I don't even have that, which is really boring and will disappoint.
No, it's great. That's good to know.
But I'm more interested in the rail spacecraft. I guess today would be Dragon and and Falcon, and I'm so excited about how Starship is moving forward and when we'll see crew there. So that inspires me more than the science fiction. So sorry for everybody that's doing space because of science fiction.
and finally, do you plan to fly, Rod? This is Rod's question. Do you plan to fly up to Haven 1 or even the bigger stations in the future?
This is all a ploy for me to get to space. So.
Yes,
I love it.
No, in seriousness, obviously, as the CEO of a space station company should try his own product eventually.
I love it.
Of course, I would love the opportunity, but that's a long way away. It might never happen, and we all want the price of flight to go down, and it's still very expensive. And the best way I can contribute is on the ground, helping lead the team, the incredible team that is contributing to space exploration. So,
well, the best way to amplify your efforts is to host the first space podcast in space. So, I heard that there's these two guys, Rod and Tarek, that are pretty good at that. So just keep in mind.
All right,
you're looking for
challenge accepted. Take me up on it when you see I'm on the crew.
You have anything else?
I just wanted to say I've been hiding a secret this whole time. Max, I just wanted to say my sister actually started as an engineer at VAST this summer. So a big shout out to Yasmin. Hi, Yasmin.
Oh yeah,
that's my little sister. Yeah.
That's your sister?
Yeah.
Oh, I obviously know Yasmin.
Was that the sister that worked for Boeing at one point?
No. She worked for a company that did subcontract work for Boeing. So.
Okay. Got it.
She's in there helping us build primary structure. And,
that's right.
We're really happy that she's here. So that's really cool.
That's the perfect response. That's way better than her. So this has been really fun. I guess my last question is there any other future plans or things we should be looking for in the next couple of years other than the obvious first launch you want to talk about or anything else? I mean, this is your spot.
Yeah, I mean, if you follow us, one of the big next public milestone we'll show the primary structure of Haven 1, and we will take it, ship it out of our the qualification articles, ship it out of our building, and send it to our Mojave test facility, where we'll put pressure and we'll put loads on it, and then that will clear the way for building the flight one. Well, we're actually doing them in parallel, but not redoing the flight primary structure and then following on integration. So that's an exciting milestone that I think when we reveal it very soon, hopefully, a lot of people in the industry and obviously at NASA and other place stakeholders will. We are the underdog, right? We arrived late on the CLD competitive landscape. And every time we are delivering against our Haven 1 promise and timeline, everybody pays more attention and takes us more seriously. So that's what I'm really excited about. We'll also reveal the interior design soon that I'm really excited about. And then we'll fly our demo satellite. I think a lot of people will also pay attention to that and the outcome. And, the other big one is, start of integration, environmental test campaign, vibe and acoustic and shock and EMI testing of the fully assembled space station. The launch is going to be very interesting. I've participated obviously in building 2 small satellite and, worth $1 million, program. This is going to be a lot more stressful. And then, the crewed mission that goes through it and docking and opening the hatch. I mean, that's going to be absolutely incredible. We have 20 cameras inside and outside. And as I mentioned, we have Starlink connectivity. So, just can't wait for that to happen. So that's sort of what we're looking at. And I guess the other one I didn't mention is the selection of our crew and the announcement for the first expedition to Haven 1. I think that's going to be also a big deal that people, oh wow, people, this is real. Like people that are signing up to this, right? And so yeah, that's all the next year and a half or a little bit more, a little bit less. We'll see, but that's a lot to do there.
Wow.
Well, that's exciting. And the ambition is really impressive. You know, we've seen some companies, no names mentioned here, we've seen some companies kind of go along for decades where we know there's a lot of work going on and we see all this stuff going in the front end of the factory and we keep waiting for something to come out the back end of the factory. So it's cool to see how fast you guys are moving. And
and we're
it's really
excited to share and build in public. You know, that's a really important part of our culture and strategy. While we've been around for just a little bit over 3 years, Haven 1 was announced last May. So, at that time we were maybe 150 people. So we've accelerated, and it's a fun place to be, and it's intense. But everybody is focused on this, single goal to build Haven 1 and make sure it's safe and launch it within that timeline of our strategy.
All right. Well, I want to thank you very much, Max, and I want to thank everybody else for joining us for episode 127 of This Week in Space, which we're calling Space Stations, Inc. Max, is vastbase.com the best place for us to keep up with what's going on?
Yes. Sorry. No, I thought it was an announcement, not a question. Yes.
Oh, sorry. Yes, vastspace.com is the best place to keep up with what's going on. And it's exciting, and check back often because there's a lot of things happening. Tarek, where can we find you saving the world from space misinformation these days?
Well, you can find me at space.com, as always, where this weekend, right after we finish recording, we're going to watch the undocking of Boeing Starliner and hopefully successful landing in White Sands Space Harbor. It's where the shuttle landed in Space Camp, by the way. That's another shout out to that movie. 80s movies abound this episode. And then hopefully playing some video games because, man, there's a lot of new stuff. New Fallout 76 season. New Doctor Doom stuff in Fortnite. It's great. It's great stuff.
Okay. Max has things to do. And of course, you can always find me at pilebooks.com or at astromagazine.com. Please don't forget, you can drop us a line at twis@twit.tv. That's TWIS@twit.tv. We welcome your comments, suggestions, ideas, and jokes, and we will answer all your emails. New episodes of this podcast published every Friday on your favorite podcatcher, so please make sure to subscribe, tell your friends, give us thumbs up, likes, reviews, whatever you can. We're counting on you. Don't forget, you can get all the great programming with video streams and extra features seen nowhere else on the Twit Network ad-free through Club Twit. And that's only $7 a month, and you certainly can't buy a ride to a space station for $7 a month. So stick with us and join Club Twit and support the cause. Max, again, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And we hope to...
Thank you, Rod and Tarek, for having me. Love to be back one day. Really enjoyed it. So
it sounds like at the rate you're moving, we'll have you back as soon as we can. So thanks again.